I'm really excited to be in conversation today with my amazing guest. Allana Clarke is a Trinidadian-American artist whose practice is built upon a foundation of uncertainty, curiosity, a will to heal, and an insistence upon freedom. Fluidly moving through photography, sculptural, and text-based works, video and performance, her research-based practice incorporates socio-political and art historical texts to contend with ideas of Blackness, the binding nature of bodily signification, and of the possibility to create non-totalizing identifying structures. Clarke received her BFA in photography from New York City University in 2011 and an MFA in interdisciplinary practice from MICA's Mount Royal School of Art in 2014. She is an assistant professor at Wayne State University in Detroit. Clarke has been an artist in residence at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, the Vermont Studio Center, Lighthouse Works, and Yaddo. She has received several grants, including the Toby Devan Lewis Fellowship, Franklin Furnace Fund, and a Puffin Foundation Grant. Her work has been screened and performed at Gibney Dance in New York, Invisible Export New York, New School Glassbox Studio New York, FRAC in Nantes, France, Savvy Contemporary in Berlin, and was featured in the Bauhaus Centennial edition Bauhaus Now is Modernity and Attitude. She recently completed a 2020 to 21 Next Haven Fellowship, which is a mentorship program co-founded by artist Titus Kaphar. Clarke is represented by Galerie Thomas Zander in Cologne and Kavi Gupta Gallery in Chicago. Allana, thank you so much for being here with me today. I can't tell you how excited I am to have you.
Hi, I'm really thrilled to be here.
Yeah, how are you doing and where are you joining us from?
Yeah, so I'm great. I'm in my studio in Detroit right now, which is in a neighborhood called Corktown.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm just gonna go right in because I had to ask you when I first saw you. You were actually in your studio, and so what we're seeing
Yeah,
behind you is actual work.
yes, not a
That's
background.
yes, not a background. Oh my gosh. And this work is destined for an upcoming show, right?
Yeah, so these are pieces that I'm working on that will be going to Cologne, Germany for my first show with my Galerie Thomas Zander there. And that's in February.
That's
Unless there's another
awesome.
pandemic or something, it's in February.
Oh no. Oh no. Let's
I know, let's
not
not even
call that
have
into
those thoughts.
That's awesome. So is that an also a new gallery for you?
Yeah, so let's see, it was in like what month were we in? March that I got representation with them. And yeah, and then representation with Kavi Gupta was just announced like last week. So
It
it's
was
been
last yeah, it was last week.
a wild year.
It has, yeah. It seems like for so many, I feel like, well, at least in the conversations that I've been having, a lot of artists kind of hibernated a little bit over this last year and didn't do very much. A few artists have done a lot, and you definitely are one of those. I mean, can you kind of talk about this last 2 years? I mean, finishing the Next Haven Fellowship is huge. Getting
Yeah.
gallery representation, starting your assistant professorship at Wayne State. I mean, and
Yeah.
I've been watching your news also.
Yeah, it's been insanely transformative past 2 years. And I think that, when like I started the Next Haven residency in January of 2020. And eh, I did not imagine that this would be my life, and or all of the things that we have lived through the past few years. have been incredibly unpredictable. But I think that, I like you made a comment of like artists either kind of just hibernating or just
Hmm.
rest or whatever they needed to do, whereas like I was super active and kind of I did both of those things really. And so because when the pandemic happened, I was in residence at NXTHVN, and it was
Mm.
really through having that community, because then those became, so there were seven other people in residence, and that was my community, right? And I don't know if you've met any or know the work of any of the people that were there in that year, but those are some of the smartest, most hardworking, and compelling people I've ever met in my life. And
Wow.
so I could not have slept, like because I'm seeing them go into the studio and like I'm seeing them like work, and I'm like, what am I doing? I got to get off the Netflix. I need to actually like, because I did do that, but I actually need to be in my space. And actually, and this was also at the beginning of me starting to work with this Black material, which are what the works that are behind me are made out of. It's called hair bonding glue, and it's like a rubber
Hmm.
latex, and we can get more into that. But so it was like so many things happening. So being in this new space, being now in this kind of extreme isolation, and just the social and political unrest and antagonism that is happening in the world, like all of that really coming to a boil. And then me just trying to process all of that and not,
Hmm.
you know, exist in a really dark space, but using the fact that I am an artist and my visual practice is how I process my experiences. And there are so many experiences to process. And so using my studio as that space of solace and as that space
Mm.
of quiet, where it's free of judgment, because at the time it was just me in there. No one else was in each other's spaces. We weren't having any visitors. So it was several, at least 2 solid months of just quiet. And then also the entire world in a way, right? So many things kind of slowing down. And existing in this space of like either kind of rest or like eruption. Rest and eruption is kind of how we were existing. And so my studio was that space of quiet where I could actually just be present, where I could feel my body, where I could touch things, because right, we can't
Yes.
touch people, we can't. But I work with this material in a really like physical manner. So touch and like really having this kind of one-to-one bodily relationship between myself and the material. So it's like that's what I was doing in that space, kind of free of judgment or other people's expectations, because no one was coming in the studio. So it was just me,
Mm.
and it was just my materials and just my processes. And so that actually for me was very powerful, and also I think gave me the foundation to really develop these works in silence, and any kind of external factors or politics of the art world or our culture at large didn't have to be present at that time. So in a weird way, making lemonade out of lemons, it that's what that time really allowed me to do, and I think really gave me the strength and the wherewithal to re-emerge into the world, uh, in a and just kind of instantly things being in like a frenzy of like one thing happening after the next.
Understood. So, I kind of want to go back with that. So, I was aware of your work. I remember you did the work. I think the first time that I saw your work, you did the piece with the sugar. Um,
Oh yeah, oldie but
very,
goodie.
very, very, yeah, yeah, quite some time ago. And
Hmm.
I don't remember if that was in Hyper Allergic, or I don't remember where I saw that at.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just on social media, but saw an article and I was just like, oh, I have to follow this artist. Like this work is fascinating. But I feel like when you started working with in your current fashion, then with the current materials, that the hair bonding glue, I started to see your work everywhere. And so just kind of, we're definitely going to talk more about the pieces, but I was this something you had already kind of explored, or is this something that you essentially just started at the beginning of this residency, kind of in an experimental way, not knowing if it was going to work or not? Like, can you kind of go through that?
Yeah,
I'm really curious.
absolutely. Yeah, so this actually is a material that was previously introduced to my practice, actually around the same time that I made that piece. So it's called Sugar Performing Histories. And so both of those works are, well, so that's the sugar piece, and then the piece, which was also a video performance work, where this hair bonding glue was kind of first introduced to my practice. It's
Mm,
a piece called
hmm.
Weaving Deconstruction. It's a video work. Um, and so that was actually the first time that that material was introduced to into my practice, but I was using it in a really like performative way,
Hmm.
and basically using it in the way in which the material is supposed to be like activated. Um, and so that was a work from 2013, when I was in grad school. So both of those video performance works were from 2012, 2013, when I was in grad school. And so it had been a material that I was thinking about since then, right? And that's a long time.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think for, and I have a really interdisciplinary practice. So it's video, performance, photography, text, now now like sculptures, and also work. For me, like all of the work kind of exists in like a slippery space of it is this, it's this, it's this, right? So it's like kind of multitudes in that way. It's kind of unfixed. But yeah, but then when I got to Next Haven, I initially thought that I would kind of work on some performance and video pieces where that could be more collaborative,
Hmm.
which I'm glad I didn't, because right, there was no way that could have continued to happen. But what happened was I got there, and I mean, it was like the biggest studio I had ever had in my life. And I was like, oh no, I gotta do something. You're right, I gotta fill this up. And then also, to be real, I don't have a ton of money. So I never was able to really dedicate a ton of money to like art materials, right? But
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
Next Haven, they give a really generous stipend. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I'm going to buy tons of this material and I'm just going to see what happens. And so
Wow.
I didn't have any kind of preconceived notions or ideas of what exactly I would do, but what was actually and has become like a really integral like conceptual element of the work in terms of like me re-articulating it, and kind of severing it from this like history of trauma, which is the same thing that I want for my body, right? To create this severance from those types of like historical and inherited traumas, and not only thinking about Blackness as existing in that type of space, but really thinking about a futurity. And so I really centered play experimentation and freedom in my studio, right? And also what I was saying before about, lemonade from lemons, of having that quiet and being allowed to be present and being forced to be in my body and be present in that space, that allow without judgment, right? Without other people's voices in my head, that allowed me to center play and experimentation, making mistakes, right? If I didn't do that, I would never have gotten to this point. So that's what I did, right? I started with one bottle, you know,
Wow.
and really literally just pouring it on surfaces in my studio, and then just examining what happened so that I could understand its material properties. And actually, so before working with this material, I had been working for the past 2 or so years with cocoa butter. And
Mm.
I went through like a similar process of really craving to re-articulate this material, and really, right, break down its like utilitarian and like aesthetic purposes, or its like usages, and really thinking about both of these materials as something that are extremely familiar to me, um, but all and personal, and things that I've
Hmm.
used in my life, but also being materials that have these like larger social and cultural connotations. And if I could really kind of contemplate on their like material qualities, could I bring a new like conversation or a deeper kind of understanding of these materials? And so it was actually from all of the trial and error of also like working with cocoa butter that also then gave me the confidence, and a
Mm.
little bit of the structure in terms of how I could work with the hair bonding glue. And it was, right, just extremely experimental, and just analyzing it, seeing what it did, and then interjecting my body, literally, right, just poking it, right,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then kind of realizing that it was such an intelligent material, that it can really capture and imprint so wonderfully, and then just kind of continuing to push that more and more and more, and then scaling up more and more and more, which really defamiliarized it, right? And using it in
Hmm.
such large quantities really defamiliarized it. And so it became something completely new. And that was really exciting.
I think it's been exciting for everyone. I certainly was excited the first time I see it, but obviously, the response, kind of resoundingly has been exciting. I mean, from Cologne all the
I
way
know.
to
Yeah.
Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Um, which is really incredible. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
I just kind of want to also before we jump into showing specific images of your work, because I do have a couple of them. I pulled a couple of the videos from your website that I just want to show snippets,
Mm.
that I think also hopefully give a nice little snippet of a narrative towards
Mhm.
your progression, but only a snippet. And just before we go into that, what got you interested in art and being an artist? Is this something that you've always known since you were very, very young? Have you had art in your life your whole time? Like, can you kind of walk through that process?
Yeah. I know, like I can think every artist gets asked this question, and I feel like other artists always have such amazing answers. Like, like either, yeah, they went to a museum and saw a thing
Hmm.
that really changed them, or their parents or a family member was an artist. And I don't have that. I came to art very, very late. It wasn't until I was like a senior in high school, and I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. You know, like no one in my family had ever gone to college or kind of really. So I literally, and I feel like I don't really believe in like fate sometimes, but it was such like a serendipitous like occurrence where, you know, I had all these college catalogs. I didn't even know how to apply to college. I didn't even know how to pay for, right? I was like just deer in headlights, but I was like, you know, all of my other friends are going to college, so I guess
Hmm.
that's what I will do. And, you know, being vaguely told by my parents, oh, you have to go to college, but really not understanding what any of that really means. But, you know, I had all these college catalogs, and just looking through things and just trying to figure out, like, is anything speaking to me? But anyways, I, for some reason, became like really attracted to the images from this one college of their like photography department, so work that students had made
Mm.
there. And I was like, oh, all right, I know what a camera is. I think I could do I could do that, you know. So I did that. I actually went to Queensborough Community College, which is in New York, a part of the CUNY system, and I majored in photography. I and then it was just like amazing from then. And so I often kind of talk about, for me, there was really something beautiful that happened in the dark room. You know, like I shot my first roll of film, processed it, I'm working in the dark room, and it's so cheesy, but it's also like a really, I think, wonderful metaphor. You know, I don't know if you've ever worked in the dark room, but right, it's this kind of completely dark space.
Hmm.
um and then you're, you know, coming out into the light with this like tray with like a soaking wet print. It's like literally a birth. You know. And I had birthed the first art object. Like, it was the first time I ever made anything, and I didn't know that I could be a person that could make things, right?
Mm.
And that, even saying it now, I'm getting chills because it was really so insanely transformative, where I really, it was so exciting, and it was
Hmm.
a feeling that I had never had before. um the image was complete shit. It was unfocused, like, but I like you know, I think undergrad photo student, I went to the cemetery and I took pictures, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I mean, it was so silly, but it was it's such an insane feeling. And I think that it, for the very first time, made me feel alive. And it, for the very first time, like, made or brought this idea to my head that, oh, I could be someone that could create. And it
Mm.
there's a power in being able to create, and a freedom in being able to be an author of something. And so, yeah, I've just been chasing that feeling from that moment, all those decades almost right ago. um
I know it's a little wild to look back on that. So,
yeah.
I mean, wow. So, first of all, I'm impressed that they were teaching darkroom
I
film
know.
photography,
I
um,
know. Yeah, yeah,
because it seems like no one does that anymore. But yeah, I
yeah.
definitely know that feeling. And then even when you walk out of the dark room after being under the amber or red light, whatever, when you have,
Hmm.
there's that feeling when you walk out into the rest of the world and all the colors and
Yeah,
everything seems so
yeah.
new. um that's awesome. How did your family react to this? I mean, most folks we talk to are just like, my family was like, yeah, you that's, yeah, no, what's real job are you gonna get? Art is not a job.
Same, same, same. My, you know, like my father, because I grew, or it was my stepmother and my father. Like when I went to college, I was living with them, and so, yeah, and again, right, because they are immigrants. It's, I get, right, same old story. Came to this country, more opportunities. You want to be an artist?
Yeah, yeah.
The hell are you talking about? But And so, you know, while they said that, at the same time, they were also like, oh, well, if that's what you want to do, then you better do it and be good and care about it and, you know, make it everything. And so while they were completely baffled by what the hell that even means, how are you actually going to make money, you know, they were still like, okay. And I really, it's only until recently, like this year, that they're like, oh, honestly, it was like when I had the show at Gagosian, because my dad, he works for the United States Postal Service, and
Oh,
so
nice.
where the one of the many Gagosian galleries is, so the West 24th one, that's by like the West Side Highway, they're the main branch for the post office for New York is there. So for like the past 20 years that my dad worked out of that branch, so it was literally across the street from Gagosian. So would like see
Wow.
them bringing in like the Richard Serras or like all these things, and then for him to then like see my work there, which is like, oh, okay, I don't know anything about the art world, but I know that's important. You know. And it looked like magnificent, and there were so many people there at that opening, and he was there, and I think that was the
Oh,
moment where he was like, oh, okay.
that is
People care what you're doing.
incredible. Yes, yes, yes. Today, I totally agree with you. We're like, we love that story. That is amazing. Oh my gosh. Especially, especially to have that connection, I'm sure
Yeah.
he's like, okay, my child has arrived. I've done well.
Yeah, because you know, of course, like those are spaces. Because you know, I went there as an undergrad, and it was a space that was so insanely foreign, right? Like the
Yeah, yeah.
mechanisms of the art world, and I think for the average person, right, like my parents, like my dad, who like his experience with that area, it's work, right?
Hmm, hmm.
Doing labor in exchange for like economic gain, but being in like close proximity to a space where it's like you see things going in, you see things happening, you see that other people are like, well, this is very important, but it's such like a foreign concept. And so for my work to be able to enter that space that he, right, worked across the street from for like 20 years, that I went to as an undergrad and couldn't even grasp, like, how do I even like, I had no idea. So it was like really like incredible, like full circle that I'm still like baffled by.
That is incredible. I want folks to be able to see some of your work now, because it's just so incredible. So just give me a second
Yeah.
to share my screen, and we're gonna jump into some video first.
Hmm.
So I think that's critical to just understanding. I mean, you do everything. I don't know. I think it would
Yeah.
be easier to try to figure out what medium you don't
I
work
cannot
in.
draw.
I don't believe that for a second.
I
I'm sure
literally
you
can't.
can.
No, you have not seen the stick figures that.
I would love to. I'm sure they're the best stick figures ever. Um, so let's see. Do I have this? Okay, we're just gonna jump right in.
Yeah,
I just think this piece is incredible, and
thank
for
you.
me, so I didn't go way back into the archives. I just wanted to kind of like start here because I feel like what's happening. I just feel like I see the connection between this piece and what you're doing right now just so clearly.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and I also I feel like in a way, no, not in a way. I feel like you've had this very consistent exploration of Blackness and what it means to be Black, particularly within the United States
mhm.
context. And yeah, can you talk about this film that or this piece that's
Yeah,
hyper zoomed upon your skin?
yeah, yeah. So I think, and I think that for me, because yes, I have a really multifaceted practice. And I think that if someone is kind of approaching my, maybe even in these pieces, and then kind of trying to see like, oh, well, how does performance fit in? Or how does like do these like more representational like video works kind of fit in? For me, like everything is about the body, but also thinking about the abstraction of the body. So like literally and conceptually. And so like this piece in particular, so it's like so I used to have like this really, really short cut,
Mm-hmm.
kind of mohawky. And so at the time when I had that cut, that's when I made this piece. And so it's a really macroscopic, zoomed in view of like the back of my head, which then
Wow.
becomes uh, extremely abstracted. So it becomes
Mm-hmm.
just about texture. It becomes about light and shadow. It becomes about pigment. And there's also like a series of photography that's like thinking about like a similar thing. But then also like when I'm making these sculptural pieces, um, it they feel like skin, and they also, so it's like rubbery,
Mm-hmm.
and so it feels very, very much like skin. And so I'm like, there are also kind of like cracks in the surface that develop that look like if you really like zoomed in on your hand and looked at the like line quality that's within our skin. um so for me, it's really thinking about like texture, and palette. I'm often also really like kind of monochromatic palettes as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like very colorful things, because I think like there's so many like distinctions in subtlety that I'm really interested in exploring. And so even in these works, like there's such like when you're in the space with them and and able to experience them very close up, there are all of these like subtleties within what from afar just seems like a kind of mass of monochromatic blackness. But when you
Mm-hmm.
are close to the work, and for me that's also a metaphor, right, about blackness as it relates to the body. When you are close and with the work or with the object in a space, you can see all of these like distinctions in the surface really unfold, and they kind of infinitely unfold. And so like a similar thing is happening, for me in this like video work, that's this very close and cropped view of skin, and the skin
Mm-hmm.
on like the nape of my neck, or the back of my head. um yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And I was just like, yeah, there's all the hair follicles, and it's in this way, it's like you're not. It's very opposite of what we're seeing, right? When and the images that we consume on a daily basis, everything's photoshopped, everything's maybe this isn't the proper term, but I'm gonna show my age and say it's airbrushed. I don't know if that's still
Yeah,
what people
I
are
don't know
doing,
what they
but
isn't that, I think that's what they call it.
okay,
That's what
okay.
I call
you
it.
know, right, and there's the seeking of this like poreless, perfect, kind of plastic skin, and you're
Yeah.
really in this piece, you're going completely the opposite direction
Yeah.
of that.
And it's interesting you say that, because like I think, you know at the point in my work where I decided to turn the camera on myself, and there were like many reasons for that, but one of the reasons is because I wanted, there were so many things that I was perplexed about, and just really thinking about how I understood or really didn't understand fully the ways in which, or the reasons behind the ways in which my body operates in the world, and the possible, or the ways in which I was being asked to exist, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And as I turned the camera on myself, I used that as an excuse kind of to really dig deep and investigate all of these kind of hierarchical and binary structures that dictate the ways in which we can exist. And that made me feel really afraid, because I had all of these like insecurities about my body, and really existed in the world in the way in which I just wanted to hide my body all the time, or just shrink myself. And I became curious as to, well, why, and then I by making these works, and a lot of those early works, like the sugar piece, I mean, putting yourself in front of the camera in such like a
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable manner, that was so scary. But I just, for some reason, I knew I had to do it. And then by doing it, that changed me. And then I knew that if such an act could change me, then it could, right, change others, and it could become such a larger conversation. And so then that kind of became the guiding principle. Like, if it made me afraid, if I felt scared, then I knew that that's something I need to explore, and I have to do
Wow.
it.
Yeah, I mean, don't have any of those earlier ones. I know, I guess a couple of them are available on your website, and
Mhm.
then I saw some on your Vimeo channel, and yeah, your earlier works are very discomforting.
Yes.
And there's a lot of kind of allusion to violence even. Um,
Yeah. And because that's what I was feeling, and that's what I wanted the viewer to feel. And then I also wanted to like transcend that, and to
mhm.
transcend it, I just had to get it out. I had to get it out. you know
Yeah,
it couldn't
yeah.
rest in my body the way that it was. um and I needed to. But then also, the other thing that was important for me, because none of those like earlier works that are so very charged and difficult are live performance works, right? They're all
Hmm.
works that are created for video, because I was also thinking about this idea of the spectacle, and really thinking critically about, the types of situations or kind of readings of the Black body. And so while I wanted to get this out, and transcend those feelings, and also kind of, in a way, aggressively put it on a viewer, I still wanted to kind of protect myself,
Hmm.
because of the ways in which Black bodies and women's bodies and beings are consumed. And so by it being a work that's on video, it's a representation of myself. It's a simulacra. And I can watch you. I often think about this, like me being able to watch you watch me, and the kind of
Wow.
power shift and exchange that's happening there for me. Um, so it's like, you can't have the real me, you can have this composed, framed version in this one specific articulation that I'll present.
And yeah, and you are totally in control. But I love what you said about you being able to watch the viewer watch,
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. So it's the gaze is not one-sided.
Yeah.
Um, that's incredible. And I just want to do a really quick snippet of my longing and my lack, which is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Just gonna say, totally incredible.
My mother taught me to hate blackness in myself and in others. My appearance was of particular annoyance to her. My hips, lips, my nose, all too big and proof of the evil that lay within me. Stealing glances at her petite, respectable features, I knew she was telling the truth. I mourn for this little girl every time I meet her gaze.
I'm just gonna pause there.
Yeah, it's
Still
such
pull
a
up emotions.
difficult work. Oh my gosh. And it's
It's so personal.
yeah. So personal. So this is a work that I made when I was in residence at this amazing space called Pearl Arts Diving that's in Pittsburgh. So that was the summer of 2019. And actually, this is a work that I want. So it'll have a few other parts and also hopefully be integrated with like live performance elements. And so this is the work that I wanted to kind of continue developing the like other recorded and live performance parts for when I was at NXTHVN. Pandemic, right? So yeah, I'm hoping to be able to pick it up because it's so personal, so vulnerable, really just putting it all out on the line. And I was able to work actually. So the thing that was really powerful for me when making this piece was I was able to work collaboratively with so many people. So I worked with, so all of the women in the video are like dancers from the Pittsburgh community. And whenever I'm like making a video work that is collaborative in this way, or a performance work that's collaborative in this way, which I've had the opportunity to do 2 times. So it's this piece and then another piece from, I think 2016 that was funded by a Franklin Furnace grant called Notes on Belonging to Boundaries. For both of those projects, I was able to work with other Black women. And so the kind of beginning point for all of those pieces is really just a conversation, like with the people that I've decided to work with. And so with the other piece, that was determined by like kind of auditions, and with this piece that was determined by like so many of the women who were already like in this community and were interested in working on this project with me. But it was like the part that was so powerful was meeting them and kind of sharing the idea behind this piece, and then them sharing their stories and us really just having a conversation. Because I think this conditioning that I think Black girls go through, it's so particular, it's so charged, it's this constant and I'm sure that many other people experience this, and I'm only speaking about like my experiences and those who are in my community that I've had opportunities to speak with. But from this conversation, it was great to be able to make a work that was so vulnerable, but then also know that I'm not alone, right? It's not like a singular experience, but this idea that I think is embedded within young Black girls of, one, being asked to change yourself because ontologically you are not enough, right? And and also thinking about those who are closest to us. And so for me, the kind of matriarchs of my family being the ones to pass down those types of ideas that you are not enough. It's so, I think I'm still unpacking the ways in which that idea has affected me. And I feel lucky that I have my work and I can do that unpacking through the work. But it's still so very emotional. But again, right, it's a thing that I feel so afraid. And watching that piece, I just feel I'm so tense. But it's
I'm sorry to
okay.
do that.
No,
Yeah,
it's okay. I made it. It's in the world. It exists, and it's meant for conversation. But and the more I encounter the work, the more I talk about it, the more I have these opportunities to build communities that revolve around these ideas and unpacking these ideas, the more, right, freer and empowered I as a being can be and can feel and can operate in the world. Yeah.
That's it. That's incredible. It really feels like so much of your work comes from, it's extremely vulnerable, and it comes from this place of self-healing. But even just like watching it, I'm a parent to a daughter who is about to be a teenager. And so it's the kind of things that even I have to check myself on, and I have to think about, and then also
Yeah.
be really conscientious as a parent, to try to read between the things that my daughter is saying, to just be like, oh my gosh, is someone making you feel less than? And I think that that's an incredible quality to your art, that it's not just beautiful and amazingly done, but it's like you're making me think about society and these things that I've been programmed with, or those around me have been programmed to think about, and we have to confront those, and that's just an incredible part of the work.
Yeah, and I think it's really complicated because thinking about this work, thinking about this material, and thinking about those experiences that I had with the matriarchs of my family, and it's this like really convoluted idea of what it means to care for another person. And what I mean by that is, I think that by telling you that you're not enough, and then introducing you to the ways in which you can transform yourself to kind of better fit within this social structure in a very convoluted way, that's a form of care, right? Because you need to survive, and this is a way that you will survive. It's cold.
It's form of protection, and something that we've been dealing with, within the Western context for hundreds of years now. So so I've got an installation shot of, you were talking about the cocoa butter, and just so folks understand that the letters that we're looking at on the wall are all formed in cocoa butter. Like, what? I think that's amazing. I immediately start to think of the smell of cocoa butter, the texture of it, because it was very, very present in my own house. But just your choice of taking that material that we're very familiar with, many of it, I mean, definitely in the African diaspora, it's like, who didn't have cocoa butter in the house growing up? But just even your choice to go into that material, just like the hair bonding glue, I don't know, what was this a choice to just go like, well, in the Western art world, oil paint is the most heralded form, or whatever, or marble, so I'm gonna just completely go around that? Like, did it come from a place of like going against the Western art canon, or was this more like an approach to just like what is deep and personal and has meaning for myself? Was that your approach or
Yeah, I think
combination?
it was more just thinking, because I try. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually that you said that, because I never actually thought of it as like kind of, but it is, right, kind of and in a way antagonistic to the kind of traditional materials of like the Western canon of art, think painting, right, sculpture. But for me, I was more thinking, because again, and I don't, it was just really, I just become obsessed with things. And let's see what happened. So I made actually, so that video work that you showed, you belong to nothing and nothing belongs to you. And what I was thinking about in that work, or how that actually work came to be, this like moisturizing my head, right? Which I did, because you can't be ashy out here, you know? And especially if you're gonna have like a really short cut, your head's gonna be exposed, like it's gotta be moisturized. And so it's that, and so it was that process, and also thinking about the gesture of like, so for Black women, if you have like braids or extensions or something, you can't scratch your, so you're like doing this tapping. So I was just doing that one day, right? It's just something you do, right? It has like a specific purpose. And then I was like, I think this is art. Actually, I don't know why that thought came to my head, but I mean, I do know why. I'm always thinking about art, like all the time, all day long. Art. And so I was like, I think this is art. And I made that video, but then I was also really thinking about this act of moisturizing the skin. And then that made me think of this material. And then I went through really this very long process of trying to think about, well, what, you know, like, how can I activate it? So, okay, of course, logically, I can activate it in this like really performative manner where my body material, sure. But then that seemed really easy. And I really wanted to push it and challenge it a bit more than that. And so it was, so I couldn't afford it because it's very expensive.
Yes,
so I couldn't
very,
afford
very.
it. So I had to like save up for a few months to afford a few pounds of it that I could really then get to work and try to figure it out. And so it was this really long process of experimentation. And then writing and language is a really important part of my practice. And then I just started to think, or, I had the idea, well, what if, the letters are just made up of this material? And then a long process of trying to figure out how I could actually make that work, and how it could like hold itself over time. And so each of these letters are made from, so I get each letter fabricated in wood, and then I make a mold out of that. Yeah. And then from the molds is where like I pour the melted cocoa butter into, and then it hardens. So it takes maybe a week or so, depending on the temperature, to harden. And then I pull it. And then, so that's what each of the letters are. And that's the process.
That's wild. So, kind of being, I just wonder, we've worked with an artist at MOAD, Andrea Chung, who works,
yes,
did
we went to the
sculptures.
same grad program.
No way, no way. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with her sugar pieces, we noticed, or it was also part of the process, like as they're in the space, human bodies coming in start to have an effect on the temperature and they start to melt. Like, does the cocoa butter do the same kind of a thing? Especially, hers are flat on a surface. These are mounted onto the wall. So like, did they start to drip at a certain point?
Are any collectors listening? No, I'm just kidding. No. No. Short answer, no, unless it comes
Wow.
into contact, like direct contact with the sun that's like hot, beaming down on it. But at normal room temperature, it's totally stable.
Wow.
Over time, right, because it's still an organic material,
Yeah. Yeah.
so the like surface may change or shift based on the environment. The color may get like darker or paler, and all of those like kind of organic aspects of the work are very much, for me, conceptually just a part of the work, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
living. um but no, like it's stable. And I actually didn't know, because so cocoa butter, right, different from like shea butter, which is far
Uh-huh.
softer
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
could not take on a form like this or be like stable in like an environment like this. So again, it was like the properties are very particular to the material, where I could be able to like push it in this way, and it can sustain itself
Wow.
over long periods of time. Um, but yes, okay. Was there more to the question, or
No, no, I was just wondering if it was gonna start,
the stability? Yeah, no, it's stable.
That's
But
awesome.
actually, so like the piece that's on the floor in that space, like that came to be because so like as I was working with the material and like the way so the process of melting it, which I have like too many crock pots that I try not to plug in all at the same time. But like that piece came to be as I was, again, so like observing the material and like observing that what it did. And
Hmm.
so as it so when it melts and then is rehardening as it's cooling, because at normal room temperature it'll just be a solid. All of these kind of like fat particles form on the surface, and it is so insanely beautiful, and really then made me think about, so like that question of like the material in an in-between state and
Hmm.
what that can signify as well, because it's reacting to its environment, whether it's melting, so it's being heated up, right? That is it bending and reacting to its environment. And then as it's cooling, it's then cooling at a rate dependent on the temperature of its environment. And depending on the temperature, it's going to kind of go back to its resting solid state in many, many different articulations. But there is a relationship between the space in which the material exists and what it's going to look like aesthetically, or and so very much also thinking about our bodies and the information and messages that our bodies absorb, and this being a material that's absorbed by the body, and how we are transformed by those messages, right? And so then really kind of pushing the material even further to like think about those like conceptual issues.
That is wild. That is really wild. And I think that then for me also then clearly goes into this, and I'm gonna show I found one of your process videos.
Mm.
Your Vimeo is amazing, by the way. Um, of this piece, which obviously I think has just been so next level for you, and I just think so next level for so many of us, just to be able to see this, that connection to beauty standards,
Mm-hmm.
and yet I think the video you're talking about where you do the weaving with the mesh,
Yeah.
kind of the onto your body. It was also very, very different, but obviously I can see the connection,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
with with this piece, but then just taking it to this whole other level, and it becomes this just something brand brand new that I don't think any of us have ever seen before. I certainly
Yeah.
have never seen it, and I just love it. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things that shouldn't be, it almost shouldn't be beautiful. I mean, as I'm watching you pour this
Yeah.
material, like
Yeah.
it's not inherently gorgeous.
Yeah. And so I think that like idea of like it, which was something that I was struggling with a lot when I first started working with the material. So it's like I'm making something, right, so beautiful, but out of a material that has, for me, and I think so many others, these really like traumatic origins. And
Hmm. Hmm.
so is it okay then that now this material is existing in a space of freedom and joy, kind of unbound, right, completely severed from that history? And is it okay that I can find joy in it now? And so I think ultimately what I decided is yes, because of what I want these objects to do in the world, and also what I want them to do for me. And what I want is like if I can, through the material, allow it to exist in a freer manner, then kind of by proximity, if I'm the right author of an object that is so kind of free and so re-articulated, then I can have a little bit of that for myself, right? Kind of incrementally.
Mm.
Um, and I'm really thinking of these as objects and works that are kind of in preparation for a world in which a futurity, right? Like a Black feminist futurity, that a world in which I'm far more empowered and autonomous and free, and those who are in my community who have historically been diminished, that they can exist in all of their nuance and all of their complexity, and all of their kind of unfixedness. So these are works for that future, um,
Wow.
is what I want it to be.
I mean, they really are. There's just a freedom in it. You know, the movement. I got to see a video of you moving one of them after, you know, it was cured. So they
Yeah.
look very, you know, for folks who haven't seen them in person. I haven't seen them in person, but I just you just do such a great job at documenting your process and your pieces that, you know, I've seen you move one of them
Hmm.
physically, so they're not as solid as they look.
Yeah. Yeah, and they stay malleable. But like, so the material will adhere to itself from the back. So that's how like the pleats get formed. And then there's like a wooden backing that the work gets drilled into to kind of reinforce and kind of freeze those pleats. But
Uh-huh.
if you were to touch it, it's still very, very malleable. And it very much feels like your skin or skin.
Wow, that's really, really incredible. And you also shared with me a picture of them, which I love to see the side of them.
Yeah.
Um, because it's not often how it's documented, just to see the three dimensionality of the
Yeah.
pieces, which I can't wait to see them
Yeah.
in real life, up close and
Maybe I'll
personal.
have a show at Moad.
Maybe, huh?
Who do I have to talk
Exactly. There is an idea.
to?
um, Sade says she loves the openness, your openness about your feelings about the material. Yeah,
Yeah, and
there's
you know, I think really making all those really vulnerable video performance works, right, get set the foundation for allowing me to continue to be vulnerable and open, no matter how uncomfortable it may make me feel.
for sure. What's next for you? I'm really curious to know. I'm glad to see that you're continuing along with this series, and it looks like they're taking different shapes now. Like I can,
Yeah,
I know
definitely some like diptychs, and these are pretty kind of large pieces. So yeah, so these are gonna go to Germany, but then I'll have work in Art Basel, Miami with Kavi Gupta,
woohoo.
and yeah, then my first institutional show will be in September of 2022 with Bennington College and maybe another institution, which we're working it out, so I won't say just yet.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible. In 2022,
Yeah.
we get to see your work at Bennington.
Yes, and it'll be all of this kind of video work. So it's the past decade of my video and performance practice that will be centered there. So
Oh
kind of
my
a
gosh, that's
survey, a
incredible.
young emerging
I know, I'm like, you're
survey.
a little too young for a
I
survey,
know.
right?
Is there such a thing as an emerging artist survey?
Hey, why not? Why not? I mean, yeah, your work goes back so far. At this point, like you've really been consistent with it, which is incredible to see. Um, we didn't really talk about your mediums, and how you move between them. I'm gonna shut my camera off while you
Mhm.
answer that for a quick second.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so, I started as an artist as through photography, but I at a point just started to feel kind of too restricted by that as a medium and just really wanted to explore different ways of making. And then I also kind of wanted to really think deeply about myself and my position in the world, and these kind of hierarchical structures um, that compartmentalize us. And so then that kind of felt like video made sense. And I had me as, the person that I had the most access to. So, that it kind of then made sense for me to be the subject of the video and performance works. Um, and then, yeah, and I'm really just interested in material. And I think, the body is a material to explore,
Mm,
and then really just not, and then writing or in reading were always a really important part of my practice, but that was more of like a private aspect of my practice, and then it became more in the forefront, and then it's just really about materials and me thinking about their significance to me, and like what if they have like kind of social or cultural significance as well, and just trying to
mhm.
figure out how I may want to work with them or how I can work with them.
That is incredible. And so a lot of your performances, or more recent performance work, has involved other folks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you write the entire script, or is that like also done in collaboration with some of the folks? You talked a little bit about the dancers that you worked with in Pittsburgh. Were some of the lines also from them, or is this all of your own writing, from your own story?
Yeah, so all of the script, it's all of my writing, so because I write a lot. um so yeah, so all of the script is for my writings, and the part that is a bit, especially if I'm working with dancers, I'm not a trained
Hmm.
dancer. Of course I
Hmm.
have a body, and there are certain ways in which I move my body or understand the body. So kind of taking a little bit of what I know and allowing their kind of expertise to um, enhance
Yeah,
what I
yeah, for
know.
sure.
So the like dance and kind of gestural parts are a little bit more collaborative, whereas the script, that's all from like my personal writing.
Wow, that's incredible. When do you sleep? That's my last question for you. It doesn't sound like you
Yeah,
ever have time. You're such a busy person.
I know. It's kooky, but it's a weird, oh, these are all the things I've been asking for. And now it's like, here it is. All at
Yeah,
once.
yeah.
It's like, oh, I guess I have been asking for this. All right, it's okay. I won't sleep. Maybe next year. I mean, I'm definitely not sleeping until this show, the works for this show are done.
Yeah. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess kind of actually, and I lied. One of the last things I do want to ask is your process, particular with the pieces that you're making right now, like, do you already have, do you kind of in your head have an idea of, the form that you wanted to take? I mean, particularly when it comes to the diptychs, or is this more where like as I've seen you kind of push and pull with, you know, your arms, your feet, your hands, completely get into the work. Is it more about documenting that gesture, or does that form and the form follows that gesture, or do you kind of have a concept in your head?
Yeah, so I am often really working in a really intuitive manner. Um, and so there are, certain things that are done in terms of preparing the surfaces that
Hmm.
is the exact same for like all of these pieces. And so what's the same? So it's the netting. So like in that process video, so I
Hmm.
lay down the net, I embed a thin layer of the material in that, and then I'm adding more and more material, and then as it cures, kind of performing upon the material. But because of the nature of the material, like a few things uh, about it, even if I do the same exact action, the imprint will
Hmm.
never be like an exact copy, right? Because the right material has a mind of its own in a way. And
Hmm.
that was really hard at first to work with, because in some, like, I can only control it so much before it kind of wants to do what it wants to do. And then it becomes a negotiation and a conversation. So what you see, in a way, is it's a collaboration between me and the material, because it's
Uh-huh.
just gonna kind of do its thing, no matter how I try to force it into like one specific thing. But that allowed me actually to really be a lot freer, because working with like video, especially, like, there it's kind of like a really strict process where
Hmm. Hmm.
you're planning the like pre-production, your location, you're planning the shoot, you get the camera, the batteries, all of these things are already set up so that when you actually press record, right, so many of all of the decisions in a way are kind of made already. But with this process, I cannot, in a way, make any decisions, because it's not going to go exactly how I planned it.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
that just allowed me to really be okay with working in an intuitive manner. And then kind of what I've learned then, or and also, right, thinking about this idea of being present. And so continuing to take that, what I came to the material with when, right, we were in isolation, it was just me, but really centering myself and allowing myself to be present. And I actually just spend a lot of time looking and
Hmm.
and just breathing and just centering myself. And in a way, it's kind of meditative. And so as I wait for the material to cure, which can take, from when I pour it, an hour or 12 hours, right? So I can't
Wow.
act on it just yet, because it's not in that, the surface hasn't cured enough for me to perform with it. So
Hmm.
in that time, while it is doing its thing, that allows me to just really think, and just process everything that I've taken in, and process it through my body, and then release it, because it's also kind of released in these really short bursts, because there's only so much that I can work it before I just have to leave it and it has to cure, and then I come back. So it's really this like accumulation of gestures. And also like no part for these works specifically, no gesture is too precious, because the next day I may come in, I pour more material over it,
get rid of it,
and that gets covered. Or even the fact that, so like when I'm working, like in that video, right, I'm working flat, it's a square or a rectangle, and that's how I'm forming it. But then that rectangle gets deformed in the draping process. So then there are so many parts of this work that, you know, you as a viewer will never see. Like I'm the only one that like knows those gestures and forms and textures exist. And that it is like also really interesting, because then I can have something a little bit more.
Just to yourself.
Yes, just to myself. But so I'm working in an extremely intuitive manner, and I work on multiple pieces at the same time, because again, I can't work on any one piece. Like I'm not working on it straight for like 12 hours, right? I can only maybe work on a section of a piece for like 10 minutes, right? So right, but yeah, because it's liquid, it has to cure, it's like a whole thing. So I work on multiple pieces at the same time. And then because of that, right, I'm like literally in here, just like jumping, like really like with my feet on, like jumping from piece to piece and kind of working sections, and then just building it up that way. And so then because of that process, there's often like a similar energy, and it depends on the day, right? So if I work on multiple pieces one day, there's like a similar energy, and the next day there can be a completely different energy, right? Or a completely different gesture that I feel like I need to get out of my body. And I'm working my whole entire body, right? Really, get elbows, right? Hands, knees, feet, right? Like everything is activated. I would bite it if I could, if it wasn't toxic, right? But like,
yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't do that. That could be an interesting. No, but really, just so I'm like sweat, right? Like in here sweating, right? Like that's how kind of energized or activated I am while working on the pieces. And so then for me, the surface is a residue of the accumulation of actions that are performed on the material. And then in terms of the draping, so it's kind of two things that dictate the form. So depending on how like thick or thin an area is, it's going to want to kind of buckle. So I kind of just pay attention to where things are kind of buckling and resting. And I just kind of begin the pleats there, and then kind of just work intuitively from there. And also if I'm kind of like draping and pleating different works at the same time, then again, like similar, then conversations start to happen between each piece.
That is incredible. Just, you know, kind of last thing, please remind us when your shows are and how folks can
Yes.
Find out about them.
Yeah.
So I know you got the one in Cologne.
Yeah, so that's in February. Dates, exact opening date TBD. But maybe mid. But Art Basel Miami is the
Coming up
second to
in
the
a
fifth.
couple weeks, right?
Yeah. Yes, a couple weeks. 2nd to the 5th, I think. And then yeah, the show at Bennington will be like October-ish. Opening date
like
still to be determined. Yeah. And then my first solo show with Kavi Gupta is in 2023, I think September as well. Yeah. So really
awesome.
booking things out.
You are, which is really, really exciting. I can't wait to see the work in person, and I hope to meet you really soon in person.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Definitely stop by Moat the next time you're in San Francisco, and
Oh
I'm gonna
yeah.
come try to stop by Detroit.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here today, Allana. This
Thank
was an
you.
amazing conversation. I am much, if it was even possible to be more intrigued and impressed by you and your work, I think I am as of today. I don't know that that's possible. Um,
Thank you.
yes, I agree with today. Mind totally blown today. Because yeah, there's aspects of your work that I was not familiar with. And I love to just kind of see how really everything weaves together. Like you're not someone who, I would say was working on one thing and then completely shifted. It
Mhm.
all weaves together,
Mhm.
um, and makes sense to how you are where you are today, which is, a superstar.
Oh God.
Accept it. You are superstar status now. Well, thank you so much, and I want to remind
Yes, thank
everyone,
you.
thank you so much for sticking with us. You can watch this recording if you came in late. It'll be immediately on our Facebook channel right after this, and you will also be able to see it on our YouTube channel by early next week. Allana, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day,
Yes,
especially on a
thank
day that you
you.
already taught.
I know.
Yes, thank you for taking the time, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.